Lucas Harrington had everything that most people could only dream of. As the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar technology empire, he had achieved what many believed to be the ultimate success. His company was a giant in the industry and his name was recognized worldwide. His office in the heart of the city overlooked the skyline, a panoramic view of his empire. He was the man everyone admired, envied, and aspired to be. His days were filled with high-profile meetings, boardroom decisions, and managing a team of experts who carried out his vision. His life was meticulously organized around his work. He woke up at 5 a.m. every day, ran 5 miles, then spent hours in meetings. Business deals, mergers, and negotiations were his routine. By the time evening came, he was often too exhausted to do anything but sleep and prepare for the next busy day. At night, Lucas would retreat to his luxurious penthouse, far away from the noise of the world. The space was immaculate, filled with expensive artwork, sleek furniture, and all the amenities money could buy. His home was the epitome of wealth and success. He could have anything he desired: rare wines, the finest gourmet meals, exclusive designer clothes, and trips to exotic destinations. Yet something was missing. Despite all his achievements, Lucas felt a strange emptiness that he could never shake off. There were moments when he would sit by his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city, and think about the path his life had taken. He had built an empire, but what did he have to show for it? His friends were few, and those he did have were either business partners or colleagues. People who admired him for his power and wealth, not for the man he truly was. He rarely saw his family. In fact, he had not spoken to his ex-wife Maya in years. And though he had dated many women, none had ever stayed long enough to make a real difference in his life. They came and went, their faces blurring into the background of his routine. The truth was, Lucas had become a stranger to himself. His wealth, fame, and power gave him control over the world, but when he looked at himself in the mirror, he could not recognize the man staring back. He had everything: money, fame, power. Yet something always seemed missing. He had worked tirelessly to create the life he wanted, but now that he had it, he felt a void he could not fill. There were no deep relationships, no lasting connections, no family. The only constant was his work, which had grown to consume him. His heart had grown numb to the things that once brought him joy. The laughter of children, the warmth of a loved one's touch, or even the simple pleasure of a quiet evening with a friend. These things had faded from his life. Lucas had spent years convincing himself that his success was enough. He told himself that his business was his true calling and that everything else was just a distraction. But late at night, when the noise of the world had faded away, he would lie awake in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if there was more to life than just this. It had been a long time since he had felt truly alive, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could continue down this path without something, or someone, shaking him out of his self-imposed isolation. As Lucas stared at the city below, he could not shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he could not predict. Little did he know, the events set in motion that evening would bring everything into focus, and perhaps, for the first time in years, he would feel truly alive again. The ringing of the phone broke the stillness in Lucas Harrington's office. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing slightly when he saw the name on the caller ID. It was Maya, his ex-wife. He had not heard from her in years. Their marriage had ended on difficult terms, and they had both gone their separate ways. Maya had left him when his world had revolved entirely around work, and since that day their paths had barely crossed. She had always been the one to pull away, to avoid any kind of reconciliation. A part of Lucas had accepted that he would never hear from her again. And yet, here she was calling him out of the blue. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should he answer? What could she possibly want after all this time? The questions flooded his mind, but before he could think any further, he pressed the answer button. "Hello," he said, his voice steady, though there was a hint of tension underneath. "Lucas," Maya's voice came through, soft but clear. There was an urgency to it, a seriousness that immediately caught his attention. "I need to see you. It is important." The word sent a strange chill through him. Maya had never been one to ask for help. She had always been independent, strong, and self-sufficient. If she was calling him now, it could only mean one thing: something was wrong. "What is going on?" Lucas asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though inside he felt a knot tighten in his chest. "I cannot explain everything over the phone," Maya replied, her tone tinged with hesitation. "But I need to meet you, at the Grand Royal Hotel. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Please, Lucas. It is important." The Grand Royal. A 5-star luxury hotel that stood as one of the most prestigious landmarks in the city. Lucas had hosted business meetings there and he knew Maya's taste. She had always preferred elegance, the finest things in life. If she was asking to meet at that specific hotel, it meant that this conversation was not going to be about small talk or casual catch-up. What is this about, Maya? Lucas's voice became more insistent, his curiosity growing. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. He could almost feel the weight of the silence pressing in on him. I cannot say over the phone, Maya finally said, her voice quieter now, almost regretful. Please. Just meet me. I'm not asking for anything else. Just meet me tomorrow. Lucas's mind raced. What could be so important that she could not explain? He tried to push away the feeling of unease creeping through him, but it was impossible. He had known Maya long enough to understand that when she was serious, something was always at stake. 1,000 thoughts ran through his mind. Was she in trouble? Had something happened to her? Or perhaps someone close to her? He could not shake the feeling that this was not just a casual meeting. It felt like it had weight, like it had the potential to change everything. I will be there, he said finally, though he was not sure if it was out of a sense of duty or curiosity. He did not like the sense of foreboding that settled in his chest, but there was no turning back now. He had agreed, and tomorrow he would meet Maya again. As he hung up the phone, the room seemed eerily quiet, too still for his liking. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping nervously on the desk. Why had Maya reached out now after all these years? What was so urgent that she could not tell him over the phone? Lucas glanced out of the window, his mind drifting. He had always been a man of logic, a person who solved problems with calculated precision. He was used to controlling situations, ensuring that things went according to plan. But this situation was different. He could not control what was about to happen. He did not know what Maya wanted, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. He turned his attention back to the office around him, a familiar space that had been both his sanctuary and his prison. All the success, all the wealth, all the power, none of it mattered right now. His thoughts were consumed by the call he had just received. Tomorrow at the Grand Royal Hotel he would meet Maya, and whatever happened next would change the course of his life. Lucas stepped out of his car, his heart pounding. The Grand Royal Hotel loomed in front of him, its grand entrance illuminated by the soft glow of lights that reflected off the polished marble floors. Everything about this place screamed wealth, elegance, and prestige. But inside, Lucas felt a sense of unease that was impossible to ignore. He had barely crossed the threshold when the receptionist smiled and pointed him toward a private dining room. He didn't need directions. He knew exactly where she would be. Maya had always preferred privacy when things mattered. He could feel the air grow heavier as he walked down the corridor, his footsteps echoing on the polished tiles. When he reached the dining room, his eyes fell on Maya, sitting at the table looking different, more composed, more serious, as though a weight had settled on her shoulders. The woman he once knew, full of energy and laughter, was now a stranger with a quiet, almost guarded demeanor. Her gaze lifted from the glass of water she had been swirling, her eyes meeting his. The years between them had not softened the intensity in her eyes. The moment their gazes locked, an unspoken tension filled the space between them. Neither of them knew where to begin. Lucas, Maya said, her voice steady but with a hint of exhaustion. Thank you for coming. He nodded stiffly, choosing not to sit just yet. The air was thick with words left unsaid, memories of their broken past lingering in the space. He had expected something else, perhaps a warm reunion, maybe an explanation, but instead there was only silence. I never thought I would see you again, not like this, he said quietly, his voice betraying a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Why did you call me here, Maya? What is it that you could not say over the phone? Maya took a deep breath, her fingers resting on the edge of the table as she gathered herself. The urgency in her posture was clear, and Lucas could sense that whatever she was about to say would change everything. I need to tell you something, she said, her eyes avoiding his for a brief moment, as though gathering the courage to speak the truth. It's something I should have told you a long time ago. Lucas leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What is it? Maya took another breath, this time locking eyes with him. You have children, Lucas. Twins? The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He blinked, unable to process what she had just said. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. I have children? He repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. How is that possible? How could I not know? Maya nodded slowly, the pain in her eyes becoming more apparent. I had to leave, Lucas. It was for their protection. I couldn't tell you back then. But they are yours. You have 2 children, twins? Lucas's mind spun as the room seemed to close in around him. Twins? How had he not known? How had he missed something so important? The bombshell Maya had dropped left him paralyzed, and all he could do was stare at her, trying to make sense of the words that felt so unreal. How could you not tell me? His voice cracked with a mixture of shock, anger, and confusion. Why did you keep this from me? Maya looked down at the table, her face a mixture of regret and pain. I had no choice. There were things you weren't ready for. And they were never supposed to be part of your world. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Lucas could barely breathe, his mind overwhelmed by the revelation. Twins? His children? He had been living in a bubble, unaware of the life he had missed. Everything he had known, everything he had built, now seemed so insignificant in comparison to the news Maya had just given him. The silence in the room thickened as Maya's words echoed in Lucas's mind. He had children, twins, and now one of them might be in danger. The weight of the revelation was almost too much for him to bear. His entire world, built on years of wealth and control, suddenly felt like it was crumbling around him. Maya took a deep breath, her eyes focused on the table in front of her, as though she was gathering the courage to continue. Lucas's heart raced, but he remained silent, not knowing what to say. He needed answers and he needed them now. I never told you about them, Maya finally spoke again, her voice heavy with regret. I kept it from you because everything was so complicated back then. Our breakup, it was messy, Lucas. You were focused on your work, your empire. I wasn't sure you'd be able to handle the responsibility of being a father. So, I made the decision to raise them on my own. Lucas clenched his fists trying to process her words. Was he really that distant, that consumed by his career, that Maya felt he could not be a part of their children's lives? I tried, Maya continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I wanted to tell you so many times. But I couldn't. I thought it would hurt them more to know the truth about you, about how we fell apart. And I didn't want them to grow up with the pain of not having a father, not like I did. Lucas's mind raced. Father? All of a sudden, the decisions of his past life, all the hours spent building his empire, the choices he made to stay away from everything personal, felt like mistakes he could never undo. They're growing up, Lucas. They're old enough to understand now. They've been asking about you for years, Maya said, her voice breaking slightly. They want to know who their father is. They want to find you. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. For years, he had lived thinking he was alone, thinking that his life was empty of anything real, anything that would tie him to another person. But now he was hearing that there were two young lives who had been waiting for him. Two children who had every right to know their father. They want to meet you, Maya whispered, her voice trembling. But I don't know if you're ready for what's coming. Lucas shook his head, the confusion and disbelief still clouding his thoughts. What do you mean? What's going on with them? Maya closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing herself for the words she knew would make everything worse. One of the twins is in trouble, Lucas. They've been trying to reach out to you for months, and now one of them is in a dangerous situation. I don't know the details, but I do know they need you. They need their father. And they need him now. The world seemed to tilt beneath Lucas's feet. His children, twins whom he never knew existed, were in danger. He felt a cold sweat begin to form on the back of his neck as his thoughts spiraled. How had this happened? What kind of danger were they in? His breath caught in his throat. What kind of danger? He asked, his voice shaky. What's happening to them? Maya hesitated for a moment before looking him directly in the eyes. I don't know all the details, Lucas. But I do know that one of them is in a bad situation, and it might already be too late to protect them. Lucas's world shattered as the weight of her words sunk in. His children, were they in danger? He had no idea what he was supposed to do or how he could help. All he knew was that he had to act fast. There was no time to waste. Lucas sat at the table in the quiet corner of the hotel's exclusive restaurant, his mind still reeling from the conversation with Maya. The weight of her words, the revelation that he had children, twins, was a constant pressure in his chest. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back, the anxiety growing with each passing minute. His fingers drummed nervously on the table, the silence around him almost too loud. He glanced at the clock, almost time for the meeting to end. He had agreed to meet Maya here, but he had no idea what to expect from this point forward. Would she bring the twins? Would they walk into his life just like that, with questions, anger, or maybe even hope? He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the door to the restaurant quietly opening. Two figures stepped inside, their presence immediately commanding attention. They were teenagers, around 16 or 17, and though they looked young, there was something undeniably mature about them. They weren't like other kids their age. Their posture, the way they carried themselves, exuded confidence and intelligence. Lucas's breath caught in his throat when their eyes met his. For a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. One of them, a boy with dark hair and strikingly familiar eyes, took a step forward. He wasn't just any teenager. There was a sharpness to his gaze, a quiet intensity that made Lucas feel as though he was being sized up, scrutinized. The other twin, a girl with long dark hair and a composed expression, stood just behind him, her eyes equally penetrating. She didn't speak, but her presence alone demanded respect, her silence somehow more powerful than any words. "Lucas Harrington?" the boy asked, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the tension in the air. Lucas stood up, his body stiffening. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. He had no idea who these kids were, but there was no mistaking the way they looked at him, like they knew exactly who he was and they expected answers. "I'm Lucas," he said, the words sounding foreign in his own mouth. He had expected this moment to be different, maybe awkward or emotional, but not like this. The girl stepped forward slightly, her gaze never leaving his. "We're your children," she said matter-of-factly, her voice steady and unwavering. "You're our father." Lucas's pulse quickened. The words hit him like a slap to the face. He had heard Maya say they were his children, but hearing it directly from them, standing right there in front of him, made the reality of it all feel too surreal to grasp. He blinked, stunned. You are my children?" The boy nodded, his eyes never leaving Lucas's. "Yes, we've been looking for you for a long time. We know who you are and we know what you've been doing. We even know about your company, the empire you've built. But none of that matters now." Lucas's head spun. How had they found him? What did they mean they knew everything? "You've been looking for me?" Lucas asked, his voice shaking with disbelief. "How did you even know where to find me?" The girl's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no humor in her expression. "Maya told us what we needed to know. And we did the rest. Research, clues, anything we could find to track you down." The boy continued, his tone unwavering. "You're our father and we've come to you because we need your help. Our lives are in danger. We need you to protect us." Lucas's mind was racing. This was happening too fast, too suddenly. He had just learned about them and now they were standing here, demanding his help. But there was something in their eyes, a sense of determination that was undeniable. "They need you," the girl said softly, almost as if she were reading his mind. "They need you now." Lucas couldn't process it all at once. The twins, his flesh and blood, standing in front of him after all these years. He had no idea how to respond. He had spent so long focusing on his own success, his own empire, that he had no concept of what it meant to have a family. And now, two complete strangers, who weren't strangers at all, were telling him that they were his children. They needed him. And there was no turning back. He looked at them both, their faces filled with urgency, and for the first time in years, he felt something stirring inside of him. Something he had buried long ago, the need to protect, to care for someone other than himself. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice hoarse, his words filled with determination. "I'm listening." Lucas stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the scene unfolding before him. The twins, his children, were standing only a few feet away, their presence like a weight pressing down on him. They were no longer just strangers to him. They were his flesh and blood, two young lives he had missed entirely, and it felt as though his entire world had tilted off its axis. His heart raced as the weight of their words hung in the air, but his mind refused to fully grasp the reality of the situation. How could this be true? How could I have children, let alone twins? He looked at the boy, then the girl, both standing tall and strong, yet there was an undeniable vulnerability in their eyes. They were teenagers, their faces a mix of anger, sadness, and hope, but none of that explained how they had come to find him. The boy, who had spoken first, looked at him with a sense of quiet expectation, as if he had waited years for this moment. The girl, standing just behind him, was more reserved, but her gaze was equally intense, as if she had already processed the disappointment that was likely coming her way. Lucas opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. He had spent his entire life building an empire, achieving wealth, and focusing on business. He had never once thought about being a father. Parenthood was a distant concept, something he never imagined he would have to deal with. And now, in front of him, stood two teenagers, his children, with a reality he had never prepared for. "I never thought about it, about having kids," Lucas said softly, his voice barely audible. "Not like this. I never thought you'd be here, standing in front of me." The boy's eyes softened for a moment. "You should have thought about it, Lucas. We needed you. Our whole lives we've needed you. But we never had you. The words struck Lucas harder than he anticipated. He staggered back slightly, his mind reeling. We needed you. We never had you. The weight of the years spent apart from them felt suffocating. He had been so consumed by his ambition, by his endless pursuit of success, that he had neglected to even consider the family that had been waiting for him. The girl's voice broke into his thoughts. We had to grow up without a father, Lucas. It wasn't easy. Maya did everything she could, but it wasn't the same. We didn't have anyone to protect us. No one to show us how to be strong, how to face the world with confidence. Lucas swallowed hard, his throat dry. The guilt was almost unbearable. How could I have done this? He thought. How could I have left them? I wasn't ready, he muttered, the words escaping him before he could stop them. I wasn't ready to be a father. I was too focused on my work, on everything else. And Maya, she didn't want me to be part of their lives. We understand, the boy said, his tone softer now. We don't blame you, but it doesn't change the fact that we had to grow up without you. Lucas's chest tightened. The words stung, but they were the truth. He had never allowed himself to be a part of their lives, had never given them the chance to know him. And now, standing in front of them, he realized that the choices he had made in his past had consequences far greater than he had ever imagined. His mind was a blur of conflicting emotions, regret, guilt, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. His life had been a series of meticulously calculated decisions, but now, with the arrival of his children, everything felt out of control. He didn't know how to be a father, didn't know how to make up for the years he had lost. Lucas's heart sank as the full weight of the situation bore down on him. Could he really be the father to these two incredible strangers standing before him? The thought felt like a cruel twist of fate. He had everything he thought he ever wanted, but now it was clear that none of it mattered without them. For the first time in years, Lucas felt completely and utterly lost. The room felt suffocating, the weight of the truth pressing down on Lucas's chest. The twins stood before him, their words sinking deeper with each passing moment. We grew up without you. We needed you and you weren't there. It felt like an echo of all the decisions he had made over the years, each one pulling him further away from them, from the reality that now stood before him. He couldn't escape the thoughts that clouded his mind. How many times had he brushed aside his own personal life in favor of his career? How many moments had he missed? All the birthdays, the milestones, the ordinary days, gone. He had never imagined how painful it would be to realize that he was the one who had caused the distance between him and his children. The boy spoke again, his voice steady yet filled with the anger and frustration Lucas had heard in it before. You were supposed to protect us. You were supposed to be there, but instead, we had to learn to survive on our own. Lucas swallowed hard, trying to understand what that must have felt like. All these years he had never been there. He had never held them, comforted them, or helped them face the challenges of life. He was a stranger to them, yet they had come to him, seeking answers. I never knew, Lucas finally said, the words feeling heavy as they left his lips. I never thought I'd have children. I never thought about what it would be like to be a father. I was too focused on everything else. The girl crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. We know. We know you were focused on your business, but that doesn't make it okay. You had a choice, Lucas. You could have chosen us. You could have been there. Her words stung, but they were true. How many nights had he stayed late at the office, refusing to give up a single moment for anything other than his career? How many weekends had he spent traveling for meetings, without ever thinking about what he might be missing? I can't change the past, Lucas said quietly, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. But I can try to make things right now. If you'll let me. The twins exchanged glances as if weighing his words. The boy, who had been the more vocal of the two, stepped forward again. We don't need you to change the past, Lucas. We just need you to be there now. To help us. To protect us, like you should have all along. Lucas nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of their request. He had a long way to go, and there were many things he would never be able to make up for. But one thing was clear. His children needed him. They needed him now, and he could not ignore that call any longer. I will help, he said with newfound resolve, his voice steady. I'll do whatever I can to protect you both. The girl nodded, the faintest flicker of hope crossing her face. That's all we've been asking for. Lucas stood there, the reality of fatherhood settling in around him. The responsibility was enormous, and he had no idea where to begin. But one thing was certain. He couldn't walk away from this. For the first time in his life, his career, his wealth, and his success seemed insignificant compared to the lives of his children. He was their father, and he had a duty to protect them, no matter what it took. The hotel room felt quieter now. The tension that had hung heavily in the air was slowly dissipating, replaced by an uncertain yet slowly growing sense of connection. Lucas had spent the past hour walking alongside the twins, trying to comprehend what had happened and where to go from here. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was simply a pause, an unspoken understanding that they were all learning how to navigate this new reality. Maya had left them alone to talk, to give them space to breathe, but Lucas could feel the pressure of the situation, as if every second of silence was a test. He knew he had to make things right. He had no blueprint for fatherhood, no guide to show him how to build the relationship he'd missed out on for so long. But he wasn't going to back away. Not now. The boy, his son, Lucas could hardly process that fact, was sitting by the window staring out at the city skyline. His face was thoughtful, his expression distant, but there was an ease to him that made Lucas feel like they weren't strangers anymore. The girl, his daughter, had been quieter than her brother, observing everything with an intensity that Lucas couldn't ignore. Her eyes were filled with the same sharp intelligence that the boy had, but there was something deeper beneath her gaze. Pain maybe. Loss. Or perhaps hope. He didn't know what to say next, did not know how to break the silence. But then the boy turned, breaking his train of thought. You know, the boy started, his tone casual, we never had a chance to ask, but, do you still play golf? The question caught Lucas off guard. He blinked, surprised that it was something so simple, so normal, that would begin the conversation. It was a topic he had almost forgotten about in his whirlwind of work and business meetings. Golf had once been a pastime he enjoyed before everything changed. I used to, Lucas replied, his voice quieter than he intended. Before everything with work got complicated. The boy grinned, a flash of a smile that made him look more like a typical teenager. I've been playing since I was 10. Maya never liked it much, but she still took me to the course sometimes. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You play golf? I'm decent at it, the boy replied with a shrug. Maybe not as good as you, but I can hold my own. There was a slight challenge in his voice, like he was daring Lucas to say more. Lucas found himself smiling, genuinely for the first time in a long while. The boy's playful tone reminded him of something he hadn't felt in years, the joy of a simple connection. They weren't just talking about business or numbers. They were talking about something real. Something human. That's good to hear, Lucas said, his smile lingering. Maybe we could hit the course together sometime. The boy looked surprised at the offer, his eyes softening for a moment. I'd like that. Maybe you can teach me a few tricks. The girl, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. I never really understood why you liked golf, she said, her tone more reflective than anything else. It seems slow. But maybe I can try it too. For the family? Lucas looked at her, seeing a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. You should. It's not all about speed. It's about patience, taking your time, thinking about your next move. The girl gave a small nod. Maybe I'll give it a shot. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a spark of something real, something that wasn't about business or money. It wasn't the thrill of closing a deal or the satisfaction of securing another successful investment. It was something simpler, more profound. It was the connection between a father and his children. It was the first step toward building a bond he had never thought he would have the chance to build. As they continued to talk, slowly opening up more about their pasts, Lucas realized that while he had missed so much, there was still time to make it right. There was still time to learn who they were, to be a part of their lives. And, perhaps more importantly, they were willing to let him. The tension had started to melt away, replaced by the possibility of something new, a future where, for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. The conversation had been flowing, easy and full of small moments of connection. The golf talk had faded into memories of school and childhood. Lucas was beginning to feel like a father, like he was getting to know these two strangers who had unexpectedly become a part of his life. But then, just as he started to relax, the tone shifted, subtly at first but enough to make his pulse quicken. The girl, his daughter, he reminded himself, was sitting with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the door. Her body language had changed. She was no longer the curious teenager who had shared in the easy moments of conversation. Something was off. The boy, too, seemed on edge, his eyes darting to the window every few seconds as if he were expecting someone, or something. Is everything all right? Lucas asked, his voice tinged with concern. The last thing he wanted was for things to go sideways now, not when they were starting to build some trust. The girl looked up at him, her eyes narrowed, filled with a seriousness Lucas hadn't seen before. There's something we need to tell you, she said, her voice low. It's about the reason we came looking for you. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. What could be worse than everything that had already happened? The boy leaned forward, his tone urgent. We're being followed. We're being hunted. The words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. What do you mean? His voice faltered, disbelief creeping in. They're after us, the girl continued, her voice tinged with the sharp edge of fear. Maya's past, things she thought she had buried, it's all come back. Someone from her past is looking for us, and they won't stop until they find us. Lucas's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Someone from Maya's past? He had known there were complications in their relationship, but this was something he hadn't prepared for. The boy clenched his fists. They're dangerous. They've been tracking us for weeks. We had to leave, we had to find you before they did. Lucas could feel the weight of the situation settle in, thick and suffocating. He had no idea who these people were or what they wanted, but it was clear that the twins' lives were at risk. And now, somehow they were in his life too. We have to leave the hotel, the girl said suddenly, her eyes scanning the room with increasing urgency. They'll find us here if we stay. Before Lucas could respond, a loud thud echoed from the hallway outside the door. His body went rigid, his heart pounding. He moved instinctively, his instincts kicking in, as years of business dealings and strategic thinking blurred into survival mode. A sharp knock followed. Lucas's eyes locked with the twins, and the unspoken understanding between them was clear. Danger had found them. We need to move, now, Lucas said, his voice low but commanding. He didn't know who was out there, but whoever it was, he wasn't going to let them harm his children. Not again. As he reached for his phone to call for help, his mind raced. What did they want with the twins? Who was behind this? His instincts screamed that the threat was closer than he realized. A nagging feeling tugged at him. The person pursuing them, the one connected to Maya's past, could very well have connections to his business. The possibility sent a shiver down his spine. Could this be connected to the very empire he had built? His success had always come at a cost, but this was something he hadn't anticipated. We'll protect you, Lucas said, his voice firm. Just stay close. We'll get through this. The girl nodded, but there was no comfort in her expression. They weren't just in danger, they were being hunted. And Lucas's past was the reason why. Lucas paced back and forth in the hotel room, his mind spinning with every possible scenario. The knock on the door still echoed in his ears, the urgency of the situation pressing on his chest like a weight he could not shake off. He had always prided himself on being able to navigate complex situations, to manage risks and anticipate problems before they could spiral out of control. But this was something else entirely. The twins sat on the couch, their faces drawn with tension, watching him as he moved around the room. Maya too was quiet, her usual calm replaced by an unmistakable sense of fear that he had never seen before. You can't keep us safe here, the boy said, breaking the silence. His voice was filled with a quiet desperation. They'll come for us. They know we're here. Lucas stopped pacing, his hand running through his hair. I won't let them hurt you, he said firmly, though even as the words left his mouth, doubt gnawed at him. He had money. He had power. But what good were those things when faced with an enemy who was relentless, who was determined to find the twins no matter where they went? I don't care about the hotel, the girl added, her voice edged with frustration. We need to get out of here. We need to be somewhere they can't find us. Lucas turned to them, his expression hardening with determination. We will. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. But as he said the words, he knew the truth. No amount of money or influence was going to protect them if they didn't act quickly and strategically. Lucas's business empire had made him a powerful man, but in this moment, it felt small. His wealth had gotten him to the top of the corporate ladder, but it hadn't prepared him for a threat like this. Not for something as personal as protecting his own children. He turned to Maya, his voice softer now. Who are they, Maya? Who's coming for you? Who's coming for us? Maya hesitated, her eyes flickering with something darker, something Lucas had never seen before. I thought I could leave that part of my life behind, but they won't let me, she said, her voice shaking slightly. They were a part of the underground world, Lucas, people you don't want to know. They've been after me for years. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors, whispers about things that didn't quite fit within the high-powered world he inhabited. But hearing Maya speak so openly about it, about the danger, the people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, shook him to his core. We need to get out of here, Lucas repeated, his voice more urgent now. I'll make arrangements. I have connections, people who can help us. We'll go somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find us. But what do you think? Could Lucas really protect his family from this danger? Let us know in the comments below how you think this intense situation will unfold. Will they make it out safely, or is there more danger ahead? Don't forget to hit that like button if you're enjoying the twists and turns in this story, and subscribe for more action-packed, heart-pounding story. This is just the beginning and you won't want to miss what happens next. But as he spoke, a growing realization took root within him. This wasn't just about finding a safe place or hiding from the enemy. This was about more than protecting them from harm. This was about his family, the ones he had only just discovered, the ones who had already suffered without him. In the face of danger, Lucas thought to himself, I have to be more than a CEO, I have to be a father. He walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. His empire, his achievements, all of it felt meaningless at that moment. The only thing that mattered now was protecting Maya and the twins. They were his responsibility and he would do whatever it took to keep them safe. I'm calling in every favor I've got, Lucas said, his voice steady. We're going to get you out of here. I'll make sure they can't touch you. The twins exchanged a look, still unsure, but there was a glimmer of hope in their eyes. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could finally be safe. Lucas stood by the window, staring out at the city below. The skyline, which had once symbolized everything he had worked for, now felt distant, insignificant. His empire, his billions, his name, none of it mattered in this moment. His mind was clouded with the harsh truth. None of his wealth or power could shield his children from the danger they now faced. The knock on the hotel door earlier had been the wake-up call he'd needed. The reality was sinking in quickly, and with it, an undeniable sense of urgency. The twins were in danger, and the enemy they were facing wasn't someone he could simply buy off or outmaneuver with money. This was a threat far deeper, darker, and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Turning away from the window, Lucas walked back to where Maya and the twins were sitting. They had been quiet since their conversation about their past. The weight of what they were facing was heavy on their shoulders, but they could see it now, the resolve in Lucas's eyes. It was the same determination that had carried him through years of ruthless business decisions, the same drive that had built his empire. But this was different. Lucas took a deep breath, his voice steady as he addressed them. I'm not going to let anything happen to you, to any of you. I'm going to protect you no matter what it takes. The words were simple, but they held an unshakable promise. Maya, who had been on edge ever since their reunion, looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Lucas, you don't know what you're up against. These people, they don't stop. They'll come after us no matter where we go. Lucas met her gaze, his eyes full of unwavering determination. I don't care who they are. They won't touch you, Maya. They won't touch my children. The twins, who had been sitting silently on the couch, exchanged a glance. There was a mixture of fear and hope in their eyes, as if they were daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, this man, this stranger who had suddenly become their father, would be able to keep them safe. The boy, who had been quiet for most of the day, spoke up. How are you going to do that? He asked, his voice skeptical but laced with desperation. You can't just make them go away. These people have been chasing us for years. Lucas's jaw tightened. He knew the gravity of the situation, but he wasn't about to back down. He had built an empire from the ground up, using his sharp mind and relentless ambition. But more than that, he had something far more valuable now, a reason to fight that was more than just business. He had a family. I have resources, Lucas said, his voice low and resolute. I have connections, people who can help. And if it comes down to it, I'll take them down myself. The girl looked at him, her eyes softening just slightly. You really mean it, don't you? Lucas nodded, his expression serious. I've spent my life chasing success, but this is different. I'm not running away from this. You are my children and I will protect you. I won't let anything happen to you. There was a long silence as the weight of his words sank in. The twins were still uncertain, still haunted by the fear that had followed them for so long, but Lucas could see something shifting in them, a flicker of trust, however small. Maya, too, seemed to breathe a little easier, her shoulders relaxing as she looked at him with a soft smile that spoke of relief and hope. But Lucas knew they were far from out of danger. The enemy was still out there and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Yet in this moment, with the twins and Maya looking to him for answers, Lucas realized that it wasn't just about power or money anymore. This was about being a father. This was about doing whatever it took to ensure the safety of the ones he loved. And for the first time in years, Lucas felt a sense of purpose that no business deal or financial success could ever offer. The night was silent, the only sound in the room the low hum of the hotel's air conditioning. Lucas sat at the desk, his fingers drumming against the polished wood. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, plans, possibilities, fears. He had always thrived on control, always had the upper hand in every situation, but this was beyond anything he had ever anticipated. He turned to the twins and Maya, who were gathered together, their faces etched with worry. The air was thick with tension, but there was something else in it too, something almost palpable, like they were all bracing for the inevitable truth to come crashing down on them. Maya shifted in her seat, a weary sigh escaping her lips. She had been avoiding the conversation for hours, but Lucas knew it was time. She had to tell him everything. "Maya," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I need to know who we're really dealing with. The people after you, after my children? Who are they?" Maya hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cup of tea she had been nursing. Her eyes flickered briefly toward the twins before meeting Lucas's gaze. There was something heavy in her expression, as if she knew the impact this revelation would have on him. "They're not just anyone, Lucas," she began, her voice low. "The person behind this, he's someone you know. Someone from your past." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. "Someone I know?" He leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean? Who is it?" Maya took a deep breath, gathering her strength before speaking. "His name is Victor Sullivan." The name struck Lucas like a lightning bolt. His body went rigid. Victor Sullivan. The name stirred something dark within him, a memory from years ago, a deal gone wrong that had never fully been resolved. Victor had once been a rival in business, someone with ties to the underworld of power and money. But Lucas had always believed that he had eliminated any threat from him long ago. He had never expected Sullivan's name to surface again, let alone in a situation like this. Lucas's voice was sharp, incredulous. "Victor Sullivan? But I thought he was out of the picture. I thought we were done with him." Maya shook her head, her face shadowed with regret. "You were done with him, Lucas. But I wasn't. After we separated, I found myself drawn into his world more than I realized. The twins, they're his grandchildren. And when I left him, when I took them away, that's when everything started." The room seemed to close in on Lucas as the truth sank in. The twins weren't just victims of an unfortunate situation. They were caught in the crossfire of a war that Lucas had thought was long over. They were part of a family he never wanted, a legacy of danger and deceit that he had tried to escape. Victor Sullivan wasn't just a name from his past. He was a threat to everything Lucas had built, a shadow that had always loomed over him. And now, that same shadow was casting a dark cloud over his newfound family. The twins, who had been silent through the exchange, were looking at Lucas now. They seemed to understand the weight of the revelation, but the look in their eyes, the same look they had given him when they first met, was still there. It was a mix of uncertainty and hope, a silent plea for answers. "I didn't want you to be a part of this, Lucas," Maya continued, her voice tinged with guilt. "But now that you know, there's no turning back. Victor will stop at nothing to get the twins back, and I can't protect them alone." Lucas stood up slowly, his jaw clenched with a new sense of purpose. He had fought battles before, business deals, hostile takeovers, ruthless competitors. But this was personal. Victor Sullivan had made a grave mistake thinking that he could drag Lucas back into his world. The twins, his children, were not going to be pawns in this man's game. "I won't let him hurt you," Lucas said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I'll deal with this, Maya. I'll deal with Sullivan. I will make sure he never threatens you or your children again." The truth had come to light, and it had opened a new chapter in Lucas's life, one where he would have to fight not only for his family but for his own peace of mind. The stakes had never been higher, and Lucas was prepared to do whatever it took to protect the ones he had come to love. Lucas paced the hotel room, his mind racing. Sullivan's men were closing in, and the walls seemed to be closing in. He had always been in control of his life, but now, with Maya and the twins at his side, it felt like he was losing everything. "We need to leave," Lucas said, turning to Maya, his voice firm. The twins were huddled together, sensing the change in atmosphere. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. Maya's face tightened with worry. "Where will we go? Sullivan won't stop until he finds us." Lucas gritted his teeth. "We move fast. I know people, and we'll be off the radar before they can find us." The twins, who had been silent for most of the day, looked at each other, their faces filled with confusion. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" the boy asked quietly. Lucas's heart clenched. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing: he would protect them no matter what. "Yes," he said, more to reassure himself than them. "We'll be okay." The chase had begun, and there was no turning back now. The tension was unbearable as they drove through the city's dark streets. Every sound felt amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Lucas kept his eyes on the rearview mirror, constantly checking for any sign of Sullivan's men tailing them. Maya sat in the passenger seat, her hand gripping the door tightly, her face pale. The twins were silent in the back, but Lucas could feel the weight of their fear. "We need to move faster," Lucas muttered, glancing at Maya. But before she could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You can't run forever, Harrington." His heart sank. Sullivan was making his move, and Lucas knew the danger was imminent. He looked at the twins in the rearview mirror. They were watching him, their eyes filled with trust, but also with fear. "You stay close to me," Lucas said, his voice low and steady. "I'll make sure no one gets near you." The gravity of the moment settled in as Lucas realized that this wasn't just about business anymore. This was about family. And for the first time, Lucas understood what it truly meant to be a father. Lucas knew they couldn't keep running forever. The shelter they found in the secluded area felt temporary, fragile, as if it could collapse at any moment. He sat on the edge of the bed, his fingers tapping nervously against the wood, while Maya sat across from him, lost in her own thoughts. "We need a plan," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. "We can't keep hiding. I don't want them to grow up looking over their shoulder every second." Lucas felt the weight of her words. He had been so focused on the danger outside that he hadn't considered what it was doing to the twins. They needed stability, something he couldn't give them on the run. He looked at the twins sitting on the couch, their faces still filled with uncertainty. For the first time, Lucas felt the full responsibility of being their father. Protecting them wasn't enough. He had to be present, involved, and strong, for them. The decision was clear. Lucas had to face Sullivan head-on. This would be his battle, and he would fight it to the bitter end, for his children. "I'll do whatever it takes," Lucas said, his voice firm, resolved. The calm that surrounded them in the secluded hideout was deceptive. Lucas knew it was only a matter of time before Sullivan's men would find them. The uneasy quiet was the calm before the storm, but he had no choice but to push forward. Maya was packing their things, preparing for whatever was to come, while the twins sat together, speaking in hushed voices. The weight of the situation wasn't lost on them either. Lucas watched them for a moment, realizing just how much they had grown on him. They were no longer strangers. They were his children, and this bond was growing stronger every minute. "Dad, what's going to happen now?" the girl asked quietly, her voice tinged with worry. Lucas's heart tightened. He had no easy answers, but he knew one thing: we'll stick together. No matter what happens, I'm not letting you go. The words felt like a promise he was willing to die to keep. As the storm outside raged, Lucas steeled himself for the battle ahead. There was no more running. No more hiding. It was time to fight for his family. The night was silent, save for the sound of Lucas's heavy breath as he crouched behind the towering concrete pillar. His heart raced, and his mind replayed every moment that had led him to this point. The danger, the fear, the uncertainty, it all came to a head now. The twins, Maya, and everything he'd fought for depended on what happened next. Sullivan's men were closing in. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they moved through the abandoned industrial complex. Lucas's fingers tightened around the handle of the gun he held, his knuckles white. This was no longer about business, no longer about wealth or success. This was about his family, his future. It was a fight he couldn't afford to lose. As the men drew nearer, Lucas's mind flashed back to the moment when he first learned he had children. The shock, the guilt, it had all been overwhelming. But now, in this moment of reckoning, it wasn't just about him. It was about them. The twins, who had already faced so much in their young lives, deserved a future free from the shadows of their past. And he would give that to them no matter the cost. From behind the pillar, Lucas could see the silhouette of Sullivan, standing confidently as though he had already won. The man had been pulling the strings from the very beginning, his power and influence making him an almost untouchable force. But Lucas knew better. His wealth, his connections, his empire, none of it could protect him now. The only thing that mattered was his family. "Come out, Lucas," Sullivan called, his voice carrying across the empty space. "You can't hide forever." Lucas stayed still, breathing deeply. The moment of truth had arrived. Then, with a swift movement, he stepped out from his hiding place, the barrel of the gun aimed squarely at Sullivan's chest. The men who flanked him froze, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. "You've been hiding behind your power for too long, Sullivan," Lucas said, his voice calm but laced with authority. "But I'm done running. This ends now." Sullivan smirked, a cold, calculated smile. "You think you can stop me? You think you've won just because you have a gun?" His eyes gleamed with arrogance. You don't have what it takes to end this. You never have. Lucas's grip tightened on the gun. He had no desire for violence, but this man had left him no choice. He could feel the weight of his responsibility bearing down on him. He wasn't just protecting himself anymore. He was protecting the twins, Maya, and the life they could build together. I may not have what you think I need, Lucas said, but I have something you'll never understand. A family. And that's all the strength I need. With a swift motion, Lucas aimed his gun at the closest man, sending him to the ground in an instant. The remaining henchmen moved toward him, but Lucas was faster. His instincts, honed from years of navigating the world of business, kicked in. Each move was calculated, precise. One by one the men fell incapacitated but alive. Sullivan's smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. You think this will change anything? I'll come for them. I'll come for you. Lucas didn't flinch. Not if I'm standing in your way. With one final push he knocked Sullivan to the ground. The battle was over. Lucas stood over him, his chest heaving with exertion, but his resolve unwavering. This was his final stand. Stay away from my family, Lucas said, his voice cold, final. Or you'll never walk again. Sullivan's eyes burned with fury, but Lucas could see the fear creeping in. He had underestimated Lucas, and that mistake had cost him everything. Lucas turned and walked toward the exit where Maya and the twins were waiting. The weight of the world still hung heavy on his shoulders, but for the first time in years he felt a sense of peace. He had done it. He had protected them. The nightmare was over. And now they could finally begin to heal. The days following the showdown with Sullivan were filled with reflection, both for Lucas and Maya. The hotel had been their refuge, a place to regroup after the chaos, but now it was time to face the emotional aftermath. Lucas knew that simply protecting his family wasn't enough. The past, with all its wounds and mistakes, needed to be healed. Maya was sitting on the edge of the hotel room's bed, her eyes tired but softer than they had been in years. She had always been strong, but Lucas could see the weight she had carried alone for so long. Raising the twins without him, making difficult decisions, and facing the danger that had now passed, she had done it all on her own. Lucas took a deep breath as he approached her, his footsteps slow, deliberate. He hadn't truly known how to start this conversation. How could he possibly apologize for all the years he had missed? For the mistakes he had made? But as he looked at Maya, he realized there was no simple way to undo the hurt. There was only the future they could build together. I never thought I'd be here again, Lucas said quietly, standing a few feet away from her. I never imagined that we'd be in this situation, or that I'd be a father. I know I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. With you. With the twins? Maya met his gaze, her expression unreadable. There was a flicker of something, maybe pain, maybe hope, but it was quickly masked. She stood, moving toward him slowly, her hands clasped in front of her. It's been a long time, Lucas, she said softly. A lot of things happened. We both made mistakes. But, she paused, her voice breaking slightly, but we're here now. And you're trying, Lucas. That means everything. Lucas felt a weight lift from his chest, but the journey wasn't over. The pain of the past wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. But Maya's willingness to start again gave him hope. He had hurt her deeply, and he knew he had to show her he was willing to change, not just for himself but for their family. He stepped forward, closing the gap between them. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. I was blind to what really mattered. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, Maya said nothing, but her eyes softened, and she took a small step closer. We'll have to take it one day at a time, Lucas. But I want to try. For them. And for us. The air between them shifted. It wasn't instant forgiveness, but it was a step forward. And for the first time in years, Lucas felt like they were on the same page. They had a long road ahead, but the foundation was beginning to be rebuilt. As Lucas reached out to gently hold Maya's hand, he realized the truth. Healing, real healing, didn't just come from protection or promises. It came from the willingness to be present, to listen, and to fight for what truly mattered. And now, with Maya by his side, he was ready to do just that. The twins had been in the hotel room with Maya, quietly adjusting to the new reality of their lives. The uncertainty of their past had been replaced by the protective atmosphere Lucas had created, but now it was time for him to step up in a way he never had before. He had to be the father they deserved. It was a Saturday morning when Lucas decided to take the first step toward building a real relationship with the twins. They had been hesitant at first, unsure of how to interact with him. After all, he had been a stranger for most of their lives. But Lucas understood that it wasn't about forcing anything. It was about showing them he was here and he wasn't going anywhere. He knocked on their door, a small but meaningful gesture. When they opened it, he smiled, trying to keep the mood light. "How about we do something fun today? What do you think? I know a great place we could visit." The twins exchanged a glance, the hesitation still in their eyes. Lucas's heart tightened, but he held his ground. He wasn't going to give up on them, not now that they were finally in his life. After a long pause, the boy nodded. "Sure. Where are we going?" Lucas's smile grew. "How about the zoo?" The idea was simple, but it was a start. A chance to connect, to learn about each other without the pressure of talking about the past or their complicated emotions. Just an opportunity to be together as a family. As they spent the day walking through the zoo, Lucas found himself watching the twins closely, observing the way they interacted with each other, with the animals, and with the world around them. They were smart, curious, and full of life, qualities that reminded him so much of Maya. And for the first time, Lucas felt the weight of being a father. It wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was about the small moments, the laughter shared over a silly joke, the way the boy excitedly pointed out the tigers, or the way the girl held his hand as they walked through the aviary. Later, as they sat on a bench watching the sunset, the twins opened up to him in small ways. The boy shared how he'd always wanted a dog, but they'd never been able to afford one. The girl told him about her favorite book, something she had been too shy to mention before. And Lucas listened. Really listened. As the evening wound down, the twins were no longer the strangers he had first met. They were his children and he was their father, flawed, imperfect, but present. As they drove back to the hotel, the twins sitting in the back seat, Lucas couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had never been the father he wanted to be, but today he had taken the first step. And that was enough. The soft light of dawn filtered through the windows of Lucas's penthouse, casting a warm glow on the room. He stood by the window watching the city come to life below, but his mind wasn't on the towering buildings or the endless business meetings that awaited him. Today it wasn't about his empire. It wasn't about profit margins or quarterly reports. Today it was about something far more important. It was about family. The twins, now living with him full-time, had begun to settle into their new life. The transition had been hard on all of them. There had been awkward silences, moments of uncertainty, and even times when they wondered if it was all real. But with each passing day, the walls between them had slowly come down. They were beginning to understand what it meant to be a family. And Lucas was beginning to understand what it meant to be a father. As he glanced over his shoulder, he saw them, sitting at the kitchen table, their faces lit up with the excitement of breakfast. Maya was there too, helping to make pancakes, her laughter filling the room. The sight of them together, his children, Maya, filled him with a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing. The twins looked so different now than they had when they first arrived, unsure and distant. The boy had become more open, his once guarded expression now replaced with a spark of curiosity. The girl had started to trust him more, sharing little things about her day, her thoughts, and her dreams. They were still figuring it all out, just like him, but they were doing it together. Lucas took a deep breath and joined them at the table. He could see the change in Maya too. She had started to relax around him, her once tense shoulders now more at ease. There were still moments of hesitation, but they were no longer dominated by the ghosts of the past. They were both moving forward. "I have a meeting later today," Lucas said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "But I was thinking maybe we could spend the afternoon together. Just us. Go to the park, do something fun." The boy looked up from his cereal and grinned. "You mean like a family day?" Lucas smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "Exactly. Just a family day." Maya glanced at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. She didn't say anything, but the gratitude in her eyes spoke volumes. For so long, Lucas had focused on building his empire, on conquering the business world, but now he understood that true success wasn't measured by profits or power. It was measured in moments like this, quiet mornings, shared laughter, and the slow, steady building of relationships. He looked at the twins, who were now absorbed in their conversation about their plans for the day. And he realized for the first time that he wasn't alone. He wasn't the same man he had been just a few months ago. He was better. He was a father, a partner, and a man who understood what it meant to love and protect those who mattered most. "Let's make today the start of something new," Lucas said, his voice filled with resolve. "A new chapter for all of us." The twins looked up at him, their eyes shining with a mix of excitement and cautious hope. It wasn't perfect yet, but it didn't need to be. They were on the path to something better, something that wasn't defined by the mistakes of the past. As Lucas looked around the room at his family, he knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would have its challenges, its ups and downs, but they would face them together. And that was enough to give him the courage to move forward. For the first time in years, Lucas felt complete. And as he sat down to join them, the future felt bright. It was a new beginning, a family, a future, and a chance at redemption. All he had to do was embrace it. As Lucas sat with his newfound family, embracing the warmth of the moment, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace that he had never known before. But this wasn't the end of their journey, just the beginning. If you enjoyed this story of redemption, family, and second chances, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that will tug at your heartstrings. Join us on this journey as we explore the power of love, the strength of family, and the courage to face our past to build a better future. Comment below and share your thoughts. What does family mean to you? Have you ever experienced a life-changing moment that led to a new beginning? We'd love to hear your stories. And remember, no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to start a new chapter. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.